Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Top 10 Songs. As you can see, my special guest, once again, you've all asked for him. He's back. Chris Alo is in the house again.
Always a pleasure, Pete.
Always a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks. Hey, everybody out there.
So today we're going to tackle Dio. Not just Ronnie James Dio, the vocalist in all his projects, but the Dio band, all right? So Chris and I, over the last couple of weeks, have kind of looked through the whole catalog, put together each of our top 10 favorite songs from the catalog with a host of honorable mentions, okay? So as always on this show, I never want to hear or look at my guest picks, all right? Because I think it's a lot more fun that we don't know and gives, good dialogue and back and forth. But yesterday, as I was fine-tuning my list, I was noticing that the majority of my list was made up of the first two Dio albums, right? Holy Diver and Last in Line. So I'm like, I got to ask Chris if he's having the same problems as I am. So I sent him a message, and of course, he comes right back and he goes...
Absolutely. I mean, it was uncanny. I had 8 songs off of the first two Dio records, Holy Diver and Last in Line. And then after talking with Pete, I was trying to pick other songs from
I was desperately trying.
The other albums, but, after discussing it with Pete, I started, and I did mention, I was like, I think it would be the same thing if we were doing the top 10 Ozzy solo songs, those first two records, but, after discussing it with Pete, I was like, well, there's the right answer is, I'm trying to pick my favorites, I went and redid it because, all my favorites are on those first two great records.
Yeah. I had actually 4 tunes that were from later albums. And after he and I talked, I just started looking and I'm like, all right, so let me take a look at one of these. And I'm like, can I honestly say that I like that song better than Invisible? Or I like that song better than, whatever. And I was like, you know what? I really don't. I felt bad not including some latter period stuff on the list, but then what it comes down to is what are my favorites. Again, this show is all about our opinions, right? These are not the 10 most popular Dio songs, or it could be.
Or the history.
Or the stuff that they played live all the time or whatever. These are just the songs that mean the most to us that are our favorites, okay? So when it comes down to it, those first two albums, I grew up on those, okay? So
same here.
I'm a little bit older than Chris, but I think
he's got me beat a little bit.
But he's still, I think you were into probably this type of stuff at a younger age than I was when I was there. So in 1980, how old were you in 1984?
84, I was 13.
Okay, so I was 18, so it's 5 years. So, I was just getting ready to go in college. You were just getting ready to go in high school.
Right.
But I think if you were into heavy music at the time, those are the albums that was big.
Absolutely.
That was so. It's just I grew up with these albums, and so did Chris. So it's hard not to look at any songs from those first two albums and say, these are not as good as something off of Killing a Dragon or Lock Up the Wolves or whatever. It's just what it comes down to.
And in revisiting, these albums, I was like, all right, am I trying to find favorites? And I'm like, how can I really say? A song off Killing the Dragon is my favorite if I haven't heard it in years.
Well, that's another thing. So, Ronnie had a lot of albums, all right? A lot of albums with the Dio band. And that's what I said to you yesterday. It's like, a lot of those latter period albums, I haven't listened to much in a decade.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's nothing wrong with them. But I just...
Other than Angry Machines. I hate Angry Machines.
Yeah.
I haven't heard it in a long time.
And, I think Magic is a good album. It's a cool concept album, but man, I don't listen to that one a lot either.
And I was just going to say, we're not crapping on Ronnie's stuff by any means, but I never really got Magica. 1 or 2 songs I liked. Yeah. And I remember one tour in particular where he played almost the whole album at the Roseland in New York City, and I was like, I was just kind of bored. And then I remember he was like, before he tragically passed away, he's like, I'm going to do Magica 2 and 3, and then play all 3 albums in a row. I'm like, oh God, that sounds terrible. So,
but some albums like Lock Up the Wolves hold up pretty well.
Yeah, Killing the Dragon I think is pretty good.
I actually like Dream Evil better than I used to, because back in the day I was kind of like, that's not a bad album.
Not a bad record. I re-listened to it recently, and not a bad record. I remember as a kid, I liked Dream Evil because I really didn't like Sacred Heart.
Sacred Heart was kind of weak compared to the ones before.
Very weak, and the songs were forgettable.
Dream Evil was heavier.
Very commercial sounding, and Dream Evil was a heavier direction. So I liked Dream Evil at the time, but in revisiting it, yeah, I think it holds up.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty good. But yeah, the bulk of the material,
which we're going to get to in a second.
Yeah.
So now we've given you a little kind of history of the albums here. And again, this is just the Dio band. So I know some of you are going to be like, well, what about Rainbow stuff and Black Sabbath stuff and all that, Elf and what have you? Well, I think we've kind of covered that on, I've covered a lot of this stuff on the Rainbow show that I did, and we've done the Sabbath thing before. Right. So, we're not necessarily going to touch on that. And quite frankly, if we were to bring in Sabbath and Rainbow into this conversation, that changes things drastically, right? Because as great as those first two Dio albums are, if you're going to do the best of the history of Dio, top 10 songs.
Yeah, and then you're throwing in songs from Rainbow Rising and Mob Rules in Heaven and Hell.
And forget it. So so that's why we're not doing that today. But again, we love those albums. And that's probably, for me, that's the creme de la creme of Ronnie James Dio's catalog.
That's my all-time favorite band, all-time favorite era of any band is the Heaven and Hell Mob Rules era. So
yeah, and you throw in Rising and Long Live
Right, just masterpieces.
Yeah. So anyway, so Chris is going to kick us off with his number 10, and I'm curious to. I have this feeling we're going to have a lot of the same.
Yeah, I'm sure we're treading a lot of the same ground.
Yeah.
My number 10 is one of the first songs I ever heard from Dio, the band, Rainbow in the Dark. In revisiting all this stuff, I was sort of remembering how, in 1982, 83, we had just gotten cable, and I used to watch MTV all the time, and, MTV played a lot of metal back then, and that was my introduction. They used to play the videos for Holy Diver and Rainbow in the Dark a lot. Like Pete said, I was 13 in 1984. I didn't even know that Ronnie had sung in Black Sabbath previously. This was my introduction to bands like Dio and not Sabbath, but Priest and Maiden, because they played videos. In between Cyndi Lauper videos, you could see Holy Diver, which is crazy. So yeah, Rainbow in the Dark's a little cheesy, heavy on the keyboards, which Ronnie played.
It's a catchy tune, though, right?
Very catchy. I know Ronnie didn't personally like this song, but it was a huge hit, so he always had to play it. But I like it.
Cool. I like it too.
It's not my favorite, but
yeah, I like it too. It was also a song that a band I was in for a little bit in high school used to play.
Oh, no kidding.
We actually played like 4 tunes off of the first Dio album. Yeah, which was kind of cool. So let me ask, maybe you know the answer to this question. This came up on a couple of my question and answer shows that viewers had asked. Was the lyrics to Rainbow in the Dark, was that at all, do you think, a stab from Ronnie at Ritchie Blackmore?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean,
there are people who speculate that it is. I don't know. I've gone over the lyrics and I'm like, I can see how someone might think that, but I don't know.
I mean, the only reason why I say no is because Ronnie had so many songs that mentioned rainbows.
Yeah.
And I read something recently where he mentioned his use of the word rainbow, and because a rainbow is a special event that you don't see very often, and that was why he liked to use that term, because it's a special thing. So of course, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I personally don't think so, because that was a bunch of years after he had left Rainbow. I would think by then he was not thinking about Blackmore at all.
Right. And
I would think he'd want to throw a stab at Iommi and Butler. But
yes, totally. But if it was the one song he did that featured rainbows, then maybe. But yeah. Yeah. So, but it's a great question.
Yeah. So, my number 10 from the Holy Diver album, Gypsy.
Okay.
And again, this is one of those ones that was not in my original top 10. Another one was from later in the catalog, and I'm like, and then I just went back and listened to those tracks off of Holy Diver that I didn't put in my top 10. I'm like, there's just no way that Gypsy can't be in my top 10, because I dig it quite a bit.
I love that song.
It's just got some screaming Vivian Campbell guitar work on there. It's just such an accessible, cool, heavy rock tune.
Yeah, I mean, it's different. I love Ronnie's vocal delivery, and it's kind of different. It's almost kind of twangy. Yeah, and the song's got a little bluesier. I love that song.
It's kind of like the sister to Country Girl, right?
Yeah, I could definitely see that. So yeah, Gypsy's a great tune.
Cool. Your number 9.
So my number 9 is Shame on the Night, which is slow and plodding and heavy. the last track on Holy Diver. That always reminded me of Sabbath. To me, I think, and I could be wrong, but I always felt like of the on the first record, that was the most Sabbath-like song on Holy Diver. Like I could have always seen that being on a Sabbath record.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I love that last minute of that song.
Oh, so
Isn't that
good,
great?
so good. And I remember there is a backward message
Right at the end, yeah.
and I remember.
What does it actually say? Because all you can kind of hear it. I can say diver, right? Diver.
I don't know. I don't think I ever figured it out, but I did do the needle thing, but I never could figure out what he said. But great tune. It's heavy, and I definitely
good choice. My number 9, off of Holy Diver again, Invisible.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that's a great tune. I love that song.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
That's just, again, I like the pacing of that song. I like those kind of choppy riffs that Viv throws out in there. And, how great is the guitar playing of Vivian Campbell on that first album?
Amazing.
Really
amazing.
good. That guy just came out of nowhere.
In re-listening to it, I'm like, wow, he really is, what would this album have been if he didn't have Vivian Campbell? For both of those records.
Right. And it's funny, not to digress, but I just before you came, I did a show on some new releases, and I talked about the Last in Line CD that just came out.
Oh, okay, which I haven't heard the whole thing yet.
I like it, okay? But I'm just, and same with the first album. I like the first album a lot. I think the second album is even better. I'm still expecting more from those guys, right? And it's and now we're talking about Vivian Campbell and some of that awesome playing on those early Dio records, and as good as he is on these 2 Last in Line albums, I'm like, he's still not kind of hitting those heights that he did back then.
Previously.
Yeah, I don't know. He's probably arguably a better player now than he was back then.
Well, he's got more experience, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And played with lots of different players since then.
It's just, but I'm just kind of I know the fire that he's got, and him and Vinny, and it's just, I keep kind of waiting for that similar vibe on these Last in Line albums. And maybe that's, my expectations are way too high. Okay,
well, that's a perfect, I guess, analogy because... I liked the first Last in Line record. I saw them once. I thought they were great live.
Yeah.
I think my problem, not really a problem, but you just nailed it. To me, I like it. It's really good melodic hard rock. But to me, for a band that's sort of selling themselves on being the connection to Dio, to me, they don't. The studio stuff sounds great. But it doesn't sound that much like Dio. It doesn't remind me that much of Dio.
And you go see him live, and they play a whole bunch of Dio songs.
Great versions.
But then the studio stuff is really solid, but it's not quite there.
No,
right?
Yeah, agreed.
And maybe that's probably because I really don't have anything bad to say about the material. I like it.
Yeah.
But I want more, and it's just maybe I shouldn't have those expectations. If I would if there wasn't that Dio connection, if they didn't keep saying that they were trying to,
right,
and so maybe whatever. But
and again, that could be because Holy Diver and Last in Line are just so good to live up to those expectations.
It's never going to happen, right?
Yeah, probably never going to happen. Yeah,
so,
impossible.
So anyway, where were you? Number 8. Right?
So my number 8, of course, Gypsy. And such a great song. I mean, I love that it's definitely different. And another, I put down the songwriters for each track, and that was Vivian Campbell and Ronnie that wrote that one. And yeah, man, what a great tune.
Yeah, they were a good duo back then.
Yeah,
those 2 guys. All right, here's where things get a little different for me. So, number 8, the title track to Lock Up the Wolves.
Ooh, okay, that's a good one.
That's a barnstormer of a tune, huh?
Yeah,
that's a really good album.
Yeah, definitely.
Damn heavy album, right?
Yeah,
possibly one of their heaviest.
Absolutely.
Right. And the only album they did with
Rowan Robertson.
Yeah.
Who I had the chance to meet about 2 years ago in Vegas. He does that show, which I absolutely recommend if anybody goes to Vegas, Raiding the Rock Vault. With Phil Soussan from Ozzy and
Last in Line.
Yep, and Robin McCauley from MSG. Shanker, and there's a whole bunch of different rotating guys that play, and they just do all classic rock covers. The show is amazing. Talked to Rowan a bunch about his time with Dio, But, I had a couple of drinks, so every time, the more drinks I had, I would be like, yeah, I saw you with Dio when you were 16. But then
I was going to say, is he even 40 at this point?
I was going to say, a couple of drinks later, I'd be like, by the end of the night, I was like, yeah, I saw you with Dio when you were like 9. It was crazy. But yeah.
I saw you with Dio when you were still in diapers. You had this guitar that was like 5 times the size of you, right?
Super cool guy. Had nothing but great things to say about Ronnie. But yeah, Lock Up the Wolves was a really good record. Yeah. That's my favorite song off of that album. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, well, what can you say?
All right, number 7 for
My
Chris.
number 7, Invisible.
There you go.
Another great tune written by Ronnie, Vivian Campbell, and Vinny Appice. Definitely different kind of guitar on it. Another song with an awesome kind of melodic intro, and then the song totally changes.
Those first 2 albums, they did that really well.
And I was just gonna say, in re-listening to everything, it's like, wow, it's really interesting how often, Ronnie would start a song with a different kind of melodic intro, and then the song just completely changes.
Arpeggio, some synths or whatever, and then all of a sudden, boom.
Yeah, no different than say, some of the stuff they did with Sabbath.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, that's really kind of interesting.
It's a formula that worked then, and it worked in this band too. So.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, where are we?
Numbers.
Where'd you?
I just did my number.
You were 7. Okay, so number 7 for me. All right, to the second album, Last in Line, One Night in the City.
Okay, great tune.
Yeah, I dig that one a lot. Again, a moody kind of song.
Yeah.
And I think that second album had a bunch of tunes kind of in that vein, and I like all of them a lot. I think the first album, for me anyway, a lot of faster paced songs than what he was doing in Sabbath. But I think on the Last in Line, a lot of mid-paced kind of stumbling on.
Moody, atmospheric,
which was different. But I like both, right? Together they make 2 great little bookends. Well, not bookends because they came one after another, but I think that even though both those albums are kind of similar, they're kind of different at the same time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So One Night at the City, my number 7. What you got for number 6?
My number 6, Don't Talk to Strangers. This one written just by Ronnie himself. Got the great slower, moody opening and ending of the song that kind of bookended the fast-paced midsection. And again, just like we were saying, just the very prevalent, which I guess didn't realize at the time, but how Ronnie had these intros to these songs, and then the songs take a complete turn. And I just always loved that song. I would love when Ronnie would play it live, and he would sort of like be enveloped by this like red laser lighting, and
which the bands that play that now, like Last in Line and Dio Disciples, they do the exact same thing. And it's one of my favorite tunes to hear from the Dio catalog by those 2 bands.
Yeah, great.
Because
great
it was so great to hear Ronnie performing himself back in the day.
It was always a favorite for sure.
Yeah, I dig that a lot. So, my number 6, back to the Last in Line album, and again falls in line with the kind of moodiness of the song I just talked about, Egypt, The Chains Are On.
Ah, okay.
That's like that kind of cool little mini epic from that album, along with the title track that just has a lot of cool things and musical themes going on, and I just always dug that song.
amazing track.
Yeah. So, good stuff. All right.
My number 5 is, and this was a tough one, the where to put it. Of course, we're in the top 5, now we're getting the nitty gritty, but number 5 for me is the title track of the second record, The Last in Line. I mean, just an epic. Again, that classic intro, and then the song takes a complete 180. The video as a kid, I loved it. Which was directed by Don Coscarelli, who I interviewed later, who did the Phantasm movies. And did the Beastmaster movies.
Wow.
And
the first Phantasm movie is awesome.
Great. And you could, the Phantasm movie had the weird kind of creatures and the green goo as blood, and he reused that in the Last in Line video.
Right. I forgot about that.
And looking at it now, it's like, wow, yeah, I don't think they'd ever show that, during the day, with the monster, and it's just a great time period, a great song.
Yeah, I dig it. Yeah. It's, as you'll see coming up soon. But for me, I don't know if you ever kind of thought about this, especially those first 4 albums, the title track to each one of them kind of had a similar. They all had similar feel to each other.
Okay.
They all had that kind of epic nature. You know, you look at Holy Diver, Last in Line,
right,
Sacred Heart, Dream Evil, all kind of almost like siblings,
right,
in a weird way.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. Which again, harkens back to say, Heaven and Hell.
Yeah,
Same
exactly. Yes.
Mob Rules was
shorter. Outlier. Yeah, that's a total outlier.
That was shorter and heavier, faster rather.
Yep.
But no, yeah, you're right. I never really thought about that. But yeah.
So that's a good pick. My number 5, the only one that's going to appear on my list from this album, is the title track to Sacred Heart, which I always really liked a lot. The rest of the album, kind of weak. And looking back, I was into it at the time, but now you listen to that album now, it's kind of like there's some good tracks on there. But I think for me, that one just stood out, always head and shoulders above all the others. And I really like that tune a lot still to this day, and I had to squeeze it in here somewhere. So, again, if I was to really, really rework this and just overthink it, I might throw that in at like number 9 or 10 or something like that. But I like it enough that I'm not too.
It's a great tune. I mean, it just missed my list. It's got
that epic feel, right? Which I always love Ronnie doing. So
definitely, it's that the plottingness of say like a Heaven and Hell, which it always kind of reminded me of. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't really like the Sacred Heart record. That's my favorite track on that album. I mean, some of it is just like shoot, and some of those others just garbage. for a man that worked on masterpieces, this is just like junk.
I know, yeah.
But the title track, Sacred Heart, great
good
song.
Stuff,
I love it. My number 4 was on Pete's list, of course. Egypt, The Chains Are On.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Just another massive, epic, sort of theatrical, has some special effects in it, and another one. I always loved it when Ronnie played it live, which was not often. I remember, I think the first time I saw him was I'd seen him, I didn't see him until the Dream Evil tour when I was, I guess, like 16. Saw him a couple times on that, but it was Lock Up the Wolves tour was the first time I saw him do Egypt, The Chains Are On. I was like, oh my God, that was...
Yeah, it was pretty cool seeing
that was great.
And, at that time, we were being treated to a lot of similar to, Maiden had the Power Slave album.
Yes.
And it's so all this kind of like Egyptian kind of mythology stuff. Was,
totally. I mean, I remember...
Young kids, we were all like, hey, this is awesome.
Right, like Vinnie Vincent with the Ankh. All that stuff sort of... Sort of played into one another. So, yeah, totally.
So my number 4... the title track, The Last in Line,
which was my number 5.
Yeah, so we're gonna see a lot of similarities coming up now. But yeah, great song. Again, I like all those title tracks from most of these albums, and they're all over the place in my top 10. So number 3,
my number 3, Stand Up and Shout, written by Dio and Jimmy Bain. Just a biting, ripping guitar from Vivian Campbell. I always felt it was the ultimate song to have open the concert. I mean, you're literally...
a great album opener, a great concert
opener,
Great album
opener, great concert opener. I mean, you're literally saying to the audience, stand up and shout.
Yeah, let's get into it,
folks. I mean, it's just ripping guitar, fast and heavy. I mean...
Nick Franco and I were talking about on the Iron Maiden show a week or so ago about how Where Eagles Dare is another killer opening tune on it. And then you throw Stand Up and Shout, too. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, that could be a whole show. Best concert opener.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally, yeah. Another good one for sure.
So my number 3, Don't Talk to Strangers from Holy Diver.
Right.
Again, great. We kind of went over that already. So, Chris, number 2.
My number 2, Holy Diver. The title track, which is, looking back now, I mean, I remember watching, during the day, the video for Holy Diver on MTV where, Ronnie's walking down the hallway with the sword, and it's a heavy song. It's epic at almost 6 minutes. It's amazing to think this was a single and a video and a hit. It's got that awesome, mystical, creepy kind of intro, which, again, in analyzing it, Ronnie did a lot, and then the song just completely cuts in with the heavy Vivian Campbell guitar riff.
Yeah.
I mean, just a classic.
Yeah, I love the solo on that song. It's great. All right, for me, number 2, Stand Up and Shout from Holy Diver.
Right. I mean, it's a classic.
It's classic, yeah. It's for a reason. All right, number 1. Here we go.
My number 1 favorite song from the band Dio, and this wasn't always my number 1, but it sort of became it at some point, Evil Eyes.
Wow,
on the Last in Line record. I don't know when that happened, but
it's a good tune.
I love the tune. Speaking of lyrics, somebody brought this up and about the lyrical content. The lyric was, "Do you ever think about the way I caught the rainbow? I'll be there when fire makes you dance." People were kind of analyzing that. Wow, okay, so is this about like Ronnie sort of like admitting that he sold his soul to be? And I'm like, I don't believe that, but it's a great theory. Sort of like the rainbow in the dark being a shot at Richie Blackmore. It's a great theory, but again,
whether it's true or not, yeah.
He mentioned rainbows and dragons so much. I mean, who knows? But it's just it's a fast song. Like, to me, it's one of those ultimate driving songs. Like, whenever it comes on in the car, on XM or on my iPod, like, I have to drive fast. It's just that.
Well, he had a bunch of tunes. They had a bunch of tunes. Like, I Speed at Night's another one.
Another great one.
Stand Up and Shout, obviously. We Rock. Driving, fast-paced
absolutely,
rockers,
just that fast riff. So it's a weird one. And Evil Eyes, if I'm not mistaken, was written for the Holy Diver album.
Didn't make it.
They played it sometimes on the Holy Diver tour, and I have a Japanese EP, which has a live version of Holy Diver. I think it's the EP. I think it's the Rainbow in the Dark EP. I think I'm a little rusty. It's got this cartoon version of Murray on the cover, but it has a live version of Evil Eyes on there. Yeah,
interesting.
So I'm like, well, no surprise then that it's from that. Well,
era. You got to imagine that they were writing all sorts of songs, like for the first album. That probably some of them probably were on the second album.
Which again is amazing looking at it, because I looked at the dates yesterday. That Holy Diver was May of '83, and then Last in Line was July of '84.
So it's over a year.
Oh my God, that's unbelievable that they put this record out, hit the road, did all sorts of touring, and then bang, back in the studio, another amazing record out 14 months later?
Yeah.
That's unheard of.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, I'd have to go look at my ticket stub or just go on to setlist.com.
Right.
I saw them on that tour, and I believe
the Last in Line tour or the Holy Diver
tour? On the Holy Diver tour.
Okay.
At the Mid-Hudson Civic Center.
Okay.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was at the end of the summer. I just come back from vacation with my parents at the Jersey Shore, and then literally that same day went to go see the show.
Wow.
And I remember how great it was.
And he had the mountains, right?
Yep.
I mean, I'm sure for Mid-Hudson, maybe he had to lose one mountain.
Yeah, exactly.
But
it was a good presentation. And each tour, the presentation got bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing them on the...
the Sacred Heart tour was the biggest one.
Sacred Heart tour was huge. I saw them at Nassau Coliseum, and it was just like this gigantic thing,
with the dragon.
The whole 9 yards. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. And I think a Rough Cut opened up, for him or something on that tour.
I remember one of the times I had the chance to interview Ronnie, I had asked him, and this was, years ago when bands were starting, like bands like Motorhead and even Maiden were starting to reuse themes and reuse props from previous tours. So I asked Ronnie if he still had the dragon and some of those other things, and he said he kept everything for years and years.
Where did he put that stuff?
He had it in a warehouse.
Oh, okay.
But he said eventually he got tired of paying the monthly fees, so they threw everything out.
Wow.
He said the only thing he kept the head of the dragon from the Sacred Heart tour, and he put that like in a TV room or something, and the rest of everything they threw in a dumpster. Oh. And he said that they had driven past it, him and I don't know if it was Wendy or whoever, they had driven past the dumpster, and they had seen all these guys going into the dumpster and like pulling out these props, and we're like, what is this? But living in close to LA and Hollywood, I'm sure people just assumed it was old movie props, and
exactly.
But yeah,
I think our buddy Steve Keeler missed his opportunity. He could have got half of that dragon, put it in his backyard with all the other cool stuff he's got there.
All that stuff, totally, yeah.
That would have looked right in place over there, All right, so my number one, probably no surprise here, Holy Diver. It's been my favorite Dio song probably since it came out, and for me, it's just head and shoulders above all the other ones. I just love it. So that's our top 10s. Chris, you want to just rattle off some honorable mentions?
Sure. Some of my honorable mentions: Mystery. From Last in Line, which was kind of like, to me, that was like the cousin to Rainbow in the Dark. Not as good, but I know it's cheesy, but I don't care. Something about it, I always liked it. Night People and Overlove from Dream Evil. Yeah. I always liked I always like both of those. Lock Up the Wolves, the title track from that record. And Strange Highways was another one. Again, the title track, again, Pete, like you said earlier, I didn't put it down here, but I had it on my top 10 list originally, Killing the Dragon, which I really liked the title track from that record.
There's a few good tones on it.
But yeah, that was... that was my honorable mentions.
So for me, I want to throw a I know some we already mentioned, but Rainbow in the Dark didn't make my top 10, but it probably sits just behind it a little bit. You know, obviously, Chris mentioned Shame on the Night. Straight Through the Heart is a pretty cool tune.
Yeah, that's a great tune.
Caught in the Middle, I got to give a shout out to because it's another tune that my old band back in high school used to play.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, which is kind of like a song that never gets mentioned by anybody. We Rock off of Last in Line, obviously. I Speed at Night. From Sacred Heart. I know there's a lot of silly tunes on that one. King of Rock and Roll is not a bad song.
You're not terrible. That was one I always thought, like, all right, he's not talking about himself, is he? Like, he's talking about Elvis, right? I mean, to be talking about yourself, that's like...
Yeah, that's kind of strange.
Yeah.
I kind of always dug Rock and Roll Children in a weird little way. Probably a lot more back in the day than I do now.
Right.
And
it was a huge hit. That was another one.
It was a really big hit.
I used to see that video on MTV all the time.
Yeah. From Dream Evil, how about the Sunset Superman?
Okay, that's a good
tune,
one.
Right?
That is definitely a good one.
Title track. All the Fools Sailed Away.
Interesting. All right, yes. All right, that's...
From Lock Up the Wolves, Wild One and Night Music.
Okay, yeah,
and
those
then
are...
from Blood from a Stone from Strange Highways.
You know, I will have to listen to Blood from a Stone again because it's been a while, and when I recently clicked on to listen to Strange Highways again, I went up clicking through it pretty quick. I was like,
yeah, it's good stuff, but it's not top shelf.
Right,
that's the thing.
And I guess that's the thing. If we're picking our favorites, like I said earlier, it can't be my favorite if I can't remember how the song even goes.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, that's. Unfortunately or unfortunately, those first two Dio albums were a hard act to follow. They really were.
Which Pete and I were saying earlier, is it that those records are so good, or is it that the latter Dio records are just not as good, or is it that it was the right time in our lives for us when we,
I think it's a combination. I think it's a combination of that and those albums aren't that good.
Right.
It's not that those later albums are terrible. They're not.
No, they're really
There's
not.
a lot of good material sprinkled, but I don't think any of them. Post, for me anyway, Lock Up the Wolves, I don't think any of those albums, start to finish, are as strong as those first couple albums.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. For me...
Especially the first two albums. I mean, come on. There's no weak tracks on any of those first two albums.
Yeah, agreed. I think Sacred Heart was a weaker, and then they popped back up for Dream Evil. But yeah, to me as a kid, not that I hated the song All the Fools Sailed Away, but I hated the fact that, okay, it's 1987... Thrash is huge.
And this is what you put out.
And the singles are I Could Have Been a Dreamer, which was wimpy, and Ronnie didn't even like it. That's why I didn't play it live. And All the Fools Sailed Away. Like the ballad, really?
Yeah.
And that's probably could be why that record didn't sell so well. Yeah. And that was really unfortunately...
There wasn't a lot of fire on that album.
No.
And I think, Vivian probably... like, I've had enough of this. I like the direction this is going.
And sales-wise, that's when things took a turn, unfortunately. People always talk about how the 80s, and you could do a whole show on this, how, the 80s was the golden era, but there were still, in the late 80s, certain bands started to struggle, like Dio and Iron Maiden on the Seventh Son record. Things were... it was a great record, but...
Priest, too. Priest bounced back, but, well, they had to, right? So, and a lot of these bands did bounce back, but, you had, and even, like, bands like Dokken and what have you, all of a sudden, it's like, come on, you with the growing thrash movement and the underground of death metal in Florida starting to come up in the end of the 80s,
which was right around the corner.
Right. It's like, so if you consider yourself a hard rock or metal band, you can't make mellower music to compete with that stuff, right?
Totally.
But they were doing it because... They, the record labels wanted top 10 hits.
Yes,
that's what it was all about.
It was
they wanted a video.
Machine,
You got to have a video on MTV that's catchy.
You had to have a ballad,
right?
Yeah,
so,
no doubt. You had to have the syrupy keyboards.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was a different time, a different show.
Got to do a whole show on the 80s. The era of metal in the 80s. So
absolutely.
All right, so let me just run down my top 10 real quick. So number 1, Holy Diver. Number 2, Stand Up and Shout. Number 3, Don't Talk to Strangers. Number 4, Last in Line. Number 5, Sacred Heart. Number 6, Egypt. Number 7, One Night in the City. Number 8, Lock Up the Wolves. Number 9, Invisible. Number 10, Gypsy.
My top 10, number 10, Rainbow in the Dark. Number 9, Shame on the Night. Number 8, Gypsy. Number 7, Invisible. Number 6, Don't Talk to Strangers. Number 5, Last in Line. Number 4, Egypt, the Chains Are On. Number 3, Stand Up and Shout. Number 2, Holy Diver. And number 1, Evil Eyes. Again, it's almost embarrassing that it's all tracks from the first 2 records, but these are my favorites. So there's no right or wrong.
No, there is no right or wrong.
I'm sure someone can tell me I'm wrong.
It's always that way, right?
That's the way it is. But
so you all know the drill. So we're curious to see.
Yeah, what are your
top 10? Again, like Chris said, there's no right or wrong here. Everybody has different opinions.
Absolutely.
Everybody has different likes and likes. So these are just ours. We're curious to see yours. If you want to tell us your favorite albums too, and if you got a lot of favorites from the later albums, we'd like to hear that as well. Like we said,
maybe somebody's favorite song is "Shoot Shoot" off of Sacred Heart.
You never know, right? You never know. So we'll see. But anyway, guys, this has been fun. Chris, thanks again.
Always a pleasure, Pete. Thanks
Same
for
here.
having me.
And we'll see Chris again in the future. We got
absolutely.
some stuff we're talking about. Chris is going to come back for that big History of Iron Maiden show we've been talking about,
which is a super important band. So
we're going to take our time doing that. So look for that this coming spring, sometime this spring. And till then, make sure you visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube quite often. Coming up, we're going to be in the House of Rock Fantasy, Steve Keeler, next week, doing top 10 songs for Testament, The Doors, and the Rolling Stones. Don't forget to listen to Jeff Young's Music Without Boundaries Monday night. I'll be guest hosting with Jeff. Jeff is the former guitar player from Megadeth. He does a very, very fine internet radio show every Monday night, jeffyoungjams.com. So check that out. 10, 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7, 11 p.m. Pacific Time. I'll be on with Jeff for a couple hours talking music, spinning music, so check that out. Otherwise, look for us here on YouTube in the coming days, and we'll see you real soon. Take care, guys.